Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. So today I thought I'd share with you how to do a very easy cab wrap. So this is really beginner friendly. And I'm using just a little over a 1-inch stone in height. These are 1-inch squares. So if I put this stone down, you can see it sits about shy of 1¼ inches in total length, and almost an inch at its widest in the girth of the stone, or in the bottom part of the stone here. So it's almost an inch. So I've cut myself 8 inches of 20 gauge round wire. We're going to be using round. I know a lot of tutorials are in square, but it's good to learn how to use round when you're first starting out. And I also cut myself about 6 inches of 22 gauge half round. I'm very detail oriented, so if you're new to wire wrapping, half round wire is flat on one side and slightly domed on the other. And all they've done is taken a piece of wire and cut it in half. So the first thing you want to do is mark center, measure your stone, okay? So I want my stone, here's the middle, right? So I kind of want to line it up on the back. Let's turn my mark over so I can see where my center is. Okay, and so this is going to tell me how much I want to cover. We won't be wrapping the entire 4 legs here, wires, but you could just get a marker if you didn't want to eye it. Here's the center approximately of the stone. So I'm going to mark about here, and let's see, I want that to sit right about in there and here. And that should be plenty for what we're going to do. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure your wires are really straight and clean. I want to show you a little technique of how to straighten out your wire, and it's super easy. And it just helps so much. So this wire, I'm just going to leave it a little slightly curved here, and I'm just going to cut off a piece. And then all you're going to do is you can normally just take it in your hand, but because of the different angles that we use with pressure, we're always going to have an area that's going to want to curve more than another. So as we hold down here, the wire is going to want to bend there. So to straighten this piece of wire out, all you're going to do is get your spool. If you have a spool, use a spool. If you don't have a spool, you can use a hammering block. If you don't have a hammering block, you can use a piece of wooden dowel, okay? Anything to roll up and down the wire, okay? But it's easier if you have something wider, in circumference, because it's going to cover the wire. So all I'm going to do is take my spool and just go up and down that wire. And I'm using adequate pressure, and I just keep going up and down the wire to straighten it out. And then that just gives us this beautiful piece of wire. Nice and straight, hardens it a little bit too. So that's really nice. So I'm always going to give you tips, tricks, and techniques to accelerate your journey in this magical ancient art of wire. So I have my half round here. And if you haven't used half round before, everybody has a different technique, okay? So I'm going to leave a little tail here, and I'm using 22 gauge half round. And I'm just leaving that tail there so that I have something to anchor off. Then I'm going to press those wires against the 4 core wires. So I'm pressing that half round. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to roll this one around on the top. So now I'm just going to wrap it around again so I have something to hold on to. And then I'm just going to wrap this wire around. And then I'm going to slide it past my mark. Now I'm going to show you another technique. I'm going to push my wires together, and if you hold firmly where your wires are, where your half round is, and just slowly turn your wire, have some tension, and watch with round wire. So here's another tip. With round wire, it has a tendency to want to roll up on itself. So come in and flatten that out so that it doesn't do that. And that's also putting memory into the wire. So I'm just flattening that out so that my wires don't roll up on each other. And I'm thinking I may have not cut enough half round, but that's okay. So I'm just turning and having enough tension here and turning the whole piece. Then I'm just going to slide them all together, and I'm going to just press these down. This is going to support the back of our cab. Now, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell so you know when my tutorials are coming out next. And your comment and feedback are really appreciated, you guys. And it takes 1 second to give me a thumbs up. So I'm going to flatten these out. And you can see, if you've noticed there, you could see how it spread those 4 wires back out to where they were flush to each other. And I'm just going to slide it up. And I think that's going to be enough. And then I'm just going to keep pushing these around, push this one around, and then fold them both over. Now you want your wires that you're ending to be facing the back of the cab. I'm just rolling that over because it's going to be hidden. So I'm just going to take my plier here and my fingernail and just push these together. I'm just really pushing. So they're nice and clean, lined up. Then you can go up and down the sides just a little bit. So you should have something like that. So now I'm going to place this on the back of my cab, and that looks good. That's plenty. And I'm going to take my tape off. Oops, a daze. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spread my wires out on both sides. Then I'm going to put this on the back of my cab and kind of line it up. So you have to decide on if you want your bail. Let me turn this around because it's a little awkward with these wires sticking out like this. If you want your bail on top, this is a pear-shaped cabochon, or if you want your bail at the point. So it's really up to you where you want your bail. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to spread these out a little bit more. And I'm going to have my point up. Yep, I want my point up. So now I'm going to open up these on the bottom. And they're going to move around a little bit. They're going to wiggle in there. That's just normal. Because round wire, the nature of round wire is to always want to roll. So that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to turn this around. And I've got my cut wires facing up, meaning where we cut our wires and tucked them in. So I'm just looking at the base of this here, and I'm going, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold my stone firmly here, and I'm going to take one wire at a time, and I'm just going to bring it up. Bring it up. Same thing over here. I'm going to bring these wires up. This one's getting too much of a curve on it, and bring it up. And we're just capturing our stone. So I'm going to turn this around and see how it's setting in here. And then I'm just going to cross my wires over the stone. It's a little fiddly. And we'll line everything up. We just want to get a good idea of how we're going to move our wires around a little bit and play. That's all we're going to do is play. Okay. Got to get my shirt out of the way. Sorry, you guys. I know I'm moving my hands all over the place. I got to pull my sweatshirt back. Okay, so I'm going to push these really in, oops, to the base of the stone. Now at this point, you could tape it. Okay, you could tape your whole stone. I'm going to set this down again. And I'm really pushing against the stone and the wires. That's pretty good. You just want to make sure that you find center the best that you can. It's going to be fiddly. Okay, I like that. That looks good to me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hand inside where that cross is, and I'm just going to bend these back. And then I'm going to put my stone back in there. Line it up. It's going to be very fiddly. You might want to use an oval-shaped stone. Might be easier for you. Then a pear-shaped. Let's slide this down. Push these up. And turn it around to the back to make sure that I've got center. And we'll be pulling these and adjusting these in even more. So here's the back. I'm going to open up this one a little bit. Let me center this up. Okay. Now I'm going to make sure you find center. Because this is where we're going to capture our stone. So I'm going to tape it for you. I want to show you how to do that. So I'm going to get a piece of tape. And I'm going to line this up on the back. I'm going to use the back as my guide so that it's center. I'm going to put my tape right over there, and I'll still be able to move it around because it's going to want to move around on me anyways. And I'm just massaging these wires. You're going to have a lot more support if you tape the stone, y'all, once you get them wrapped over it. And then I'm going to bring my tape around. And we'll be making some adjustments as we go. Now you'll have more control because it's a little fiddly, as I said. Now we're going to bring these wires back even more so that we're center over the stone. I'm really pulling them over the side of the tip here, giving them a good pull. Now I'm going to take my tape off to see how centered I am, because I'm going to have a lot more support now that I've bent those over the top of the stone. And this one here is still a little, to me, loose on the side. So I'm just going to massage that up. So here's another technique. You can come back here where the tip of the wire is and give it a good pull. You don't want to pull super hard, but enough to where you feel the wire connecting more firmly with the stone. So I'm looking in here at these gap spaces here, and you're going to have a little bit, but that's okay. So I'm going to pull this outside wire, holding very firmly, just a little bit more. That looks good. I'm going to leave my tape on the back. Now I want to line up these wires because this is going to be part of our bail. I'm going to line these wires up with the bail. So just look at where the neck is. And you want to come in right where the neck is. So see how my plier tip is hitting the neck? And you just want to bend that wire straight up. And you come around to the other side, and you look at where that neck is. And I need to do it another way because I can't see right that way. and you want to bend that wire straight up. So you should have something like this. Isn't this cool? It's cool little. I was just thinking this morning, I want to do a more simple wire wrap. The fiddly part is bringing those wires up around the stone. So now we're going to set our bail. Just want to make sure everything's evened up. And I'm going to get 26 gauge weaving wire. And I'm going to cut myself about, I'll tell you here in a minute, because I want to use a wire on each side. So let me set this down. I'm measuring right now, y'all. And that's all tangled or mangled on the end, so I need to cut that off because I won't be using that. I'm going to cut myself 3 feet of wire. So I'm using 26 gauge. You can use 28. So just bear with me here because I'm measuring off my 2-foot mat. So the next thing I'm going to do is just take my wire, fold it in half so I can find center. And then I'm going to bring the wire down through the 2 middle wires, just like this. And I'm going to cross one over one side and one over the other side. And I'm going to come down on the stone a little bit, just so I have some support so I can tighten up those wires. Now I'm on the back, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap around both these 2 wires. Just pulling that together. And I want that to be, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to curve these in a little bit more. I'm not going to be making a huge bail, so just want to curve these wires in. I got to do this from the other side. There we go. Want them a little bit closer together. These are crossing over. And I'm going to bend this one down a little bit more. So I'm just going to come up underneath that and rock that wire down in a little bit more. Okay, I want to tighten this side up a little bit. It's too loose, so I'm really using my fingernail to get that good and snug. Now I'm going to bring this wire, remember we crossed them over in the middle. I'm going to bring it around these 2 wires, and I'm going to snug it down. It'll get easier once we get them all connected. Okay, so we've got both our wires coming out from the left and the right. So now I'm going to wrap over the top of these wires and come in between them where the wire is coming out the back, and the same thing on the other side. We're just repeating the pattern. Now both wires are coming out the back, and all we're going to do is cross them over again. So we're crossing them over in the back. Now that they're crossed over in the back, we're going to bring them back through the 2, so that as we crossed our wires over in the back, we're coming up through the 2 wires on the right and up through the two on the left. So both the wires that crossed over are coming up through the top, okay? Then we're going to cross them over again and back through and cross over and back through. It makes a really cool looking bail. So now the wires are coming out the back. So we just want to straighten them out. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to wrap around this wire and the same thing on the other side. We're going to wrap around these two wires. We're never going to be wrapping in between the wires that are parallel to each other. We're keeping them in that position the entire time. So now we're going to come around to the front and we're going to come back through, and we're going to cross over from one side to the other. So we're crossing our wires over every time we come through. And now the wires are in the back and we're going to come back up and through. So now they're both coming out the top again. So now we're just going to cross them over. So we're going to cross over the two middle wires, cross over the two middle wires, and now the wires are coming out the back. And then we're going to bring them around. We're doing the same thing on each side. Instead of using one wire, we're using two. So now I'm going to start tightening everything up. And we've got a good strong bail here now. So now we're going to come over the top and in between, over the top of the two outside wires and in between. So they're both coming out the back. We're going to cross them over from left to right or right to left. We're going to bring them back up in between. I hope I have enough weaving wire here. Sorry, you guys. I'm trying to do that simply, and that was just ridiculous. Don't fight your wire. Just cleaning some things up here that are bugging me. Okay, so both our wires are coming out the top. Going to cross one over and back in between. Cross the other one over and back in between. When I'm doing that, I'm leaving a little slack until I get them both crossed over and back through the back. Now we're going to cross them over again and bring them around. Now they're coming around the top. And we're going to go back over the two outside wires in between. Back over the two outside wires in between. And we're going to cross them over. We're always crossing over when we get to the middle. Just going to line up my little wraps here because they should always be in sequence of two. Okay, so they're crossing over. We're going to come back through the middle. Then we're going to cross over. And we're going to cross over. And both wires are coming out the back. Now, with both of them crossed over again, we're going to come around the two wires and around the two wires, and both wires are crossing over in the back. Now we're going to come all the way around again, come back in between, all the way around. We're always going to have 2 coils. Then we're going to cross over in the back. Now we're going to come back up in between. I hope this is making sense. It's a little confusing at first. I'm going to cross over, cross over. So they're both crossing over in the front. So now I'm going to cross them over in the back and come back around and wrap around the outside 2 wires and come up, come back around the outside 2 wires and come up. So they're both coming over the top again. So we're going to go back in between, and then we're going to cross over in the back. Then come back up through. Now they're coming out the top. We're going to cross over. Cross over. Now we're going to cross them over again in the back and wrap around our outside 2 wires. Bring it around. Now they're both coming out the sides, and we're going to bring them back through. And this is what we're just going to keep doing. So I'm looking at how much bail I want here. I may not have enough weaving wire, and I'm going to bring my little coils together. That one I pushed on itself. I'm just going to come in and just push them down a little bit. Isn't that cool? Okay. So we're going to cross them over in the back. Oh my goodness, these wires are just picking up everything. And bring it through the middle. Bring it through the middle, over and over. They're coming out the back, crossed over in the middle. So I'm going to cross them over again. So I've got both my wires crossed over in the back, and I'm going to wrap them around these outside wires. Bring them up. Then back through the middle. So here's the back. We cross them over. Then we come back up. Cross them over. And it doesn't matter which way you cross them over, as long as you're crossing them over. Then they're coming out the back, and we're going to wrap around. Okay, I think you've got this pattern down now. So I'm just going to see how much length I have here. And it looks like I have just shy of 3/4 of an inch. I don't want a big, huge bail for this. So I'm going to do, I think I'm going to do a 1-inch bail. So that gives me 1/2 inch once I bend it over. Come around the back. So I'm going to finish weaving up to the 1-inch mark, and I'll be right back. So I've made my 1-inch bail. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave my tape on the back. Make sure that my wires are lined up. Turn it around, see how they look on the back. Push that little guy up. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to swing these wires up. Make sure they're lined up. Then I'm going to bring my first wire over the stone like this, and then my second wire over the stone like this. So we got them crossing over in the middle. Now I'm going to take my tape off the back. You want to make sure that you have symmetry. And now I'm going to bring my wires. And you always want to look in as many different directions as you can to make sure that you're maintaining symmetry. And I'm just going to follow the suit of these wires here. Turn it around. Isn't that pretty? Just a really cool design. I just do everything off the hip, gang. So now what I'm going to do before I complete my bale is I'm going to weave these together down here so they're connected. And I'm going to use you can use a half round, you can use 28 gauge. I'm going to use 28 gauge. So I'm just cutting myself some wire here if you're wondering where I went. Get all this mess out of the way. And I'm going to coil I'm going to hold very firmly. Three full rotations. So that's 3. Then I'm going to feed my wire through this gap space down here. And before I pull it all the way through, I'm going to come back up underneath the wire, because I really want a good connection here. And then I'm going to slide these down. So my wire is coming in between these two wires. So I'm going to swing it around and bring it back through that gap space. And this time I'm going to leave it underneath both the wires. And then I'm going to coil 3 times. That's 2, and that's 3. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm maintaining everything up here. Isn't that pretty? I just think that's really elegant. Okay, so let's do that again. So I'm going to feed my wire through the gap space. I couldn't see. Okay. And I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I'm just slowly bringing that coil around. Then I'm going to come back up underneath the wire. Make sure you hold firmly and pull that in. Now I can see a little bow in the wire, so all I'm going to do is just push it down, give it a little more memory. Then I'm going to feed through that gap space again. You want to keep a healthy loop and pull it through. Now I'm going to do 3 coils. So let's flatten this one out a little bit. Just rocking my wires on there. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I will snap this wire off once I connect it. So I'm coming around the back. I'm going to move this guy out of the way, and I'm going to start shaping my wire. following the curve here. See that little curve? And I'm going to continue that until I meet up here. And if you don't have any gap space, you'll find it. You can always lift up on your wire. I'm trying to do this under the camera. I got to turn this to where I can see it. I couldn't see it, you guys. Oh, goodness me. Let me get this straightened out. I'm looking for my gap space, and it's right there. See that little gap in there? Just had to put a little curl on the end there. So that's another good tip. Kind of put a little gentle curl on the end of your tip. So as before, my wire is coming underneath, but now I'm going to back out of it and come back around, hold firmly on my wires here. See where my thumb is? And gently pull that through. Keep a healthy loop on your wire so it doesn't kink up as it's coming around. So I can see my gap now from here. So now I'm going to do 3 coils. 1, 'Now I'm just going to turn my work around and make sure that I didn't compromise anything. So what I'm going to do is do the other side, and then we'll connect them back here. So I'm going to do the same thing. Got a little bend in my wire there. And I cut myself, you guys, about 8 inches of weaving wire, if I failed to mention that. Make sure you don't cross them over. A lot of twisting and turning here. Coming up underneath both of them. This one got a little bow in it, so I'm just going to flatten it out. Doing my 3 wraps. So I think it's safe to go ahead and snap this one off. If you've never snapped your wire before, you want to hold all your wires very firmly and then just wiggle jiggle and it'll come clean off. So this is what we have so far. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to do the other side and then I'll come back in. Just want to bring all my wires in. Isn't that cool? It's just so cool. I just think it's such a little cool little design. We'll center that up and then we'll finish our bail. So let's just do one more wrap. So I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do 5 repeats of this pattern. And this time, I'm going to actually bring it under. So just to make life a little bit easier for me. And then slide it through. There we go. You want to always keep a very healthy loop in your wire or you'll kink it up. And don't let it cross under the other wires. I could feel that actually going under. So before I even pull it any further through, I'm going to move it. It's because it's hitting the stone. So I can see underneath how it's crossing over. So I'm going to back out of that. I'm always going to show you the techniques that I use because it got caught up underneath the wire there in the back and crossed over it. And I don't want it to do that. So I'm going to see if I can get it slid out enough. A little awkward with all these wires in the way, and it's not. So I'm going to have to feed it through again. And I'm really hardening my wire at this point, so I have to be mindful. It's because right here it's hitting the stone. So let me show you another technique. I'm going to lift up on this wire. This is my favorite tool. It's a little wood carving tool. So this one right here that's really hitting the stone tightly, I'm going to come up underneath it and just lift it up just a little bit so I can get my wire underneath there without it crossing over the other wires. There we go. Much better. Now I'm going to do my 3 coils. And then I'm just going to go off camera very quickly and do the other side. Just wanted you to see the completion of one side. Over here, I'm just going to take anything wooden or rubber, and I'm just going to kind of roll this down into the stone a little bit. And then slide all my weaves up. So we have this. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to start with 3 coils right up here, then go around and then underneath again, and then back around. But it's a very basic, very common pattern. It's used quite frequently in wire wrapping. Just going to line up my pattern here. And then we'll do the bail and we'll be done. I'll be right back. Okay, so I weave both sides. You just want to make sure they're lined up. You want to check your symmetry and gap in between your wires, right? So now we have both these wires crossing over in the back. And what we're going to do is uncross them. So I'm going to put my thumb right here where the wires are crossing over, and I'm just going to swing it around. Then I'm going to put my thumb right here and swing it around. And then I'm just going to line them up, make sure they're lined up in the middle. Okay. You can do so much decoration here. It's amazing. But we're going to just close these off, and I'm going to weave them together up here. So I'm just lining them up nicely. Make sure that you don't do anything to mess up your front here. So I'm not going to use this anymore down here. I'm just going to go ahead and snap it, and I'm going to bring in new wire. So I'm going to cut myself another, oh, I don't know. Is that 26? That's 26. I don't want to use 26. I want to use 28. So I'm going to cut myself about 8 inches. Just looking at my connection points here. And I'm going to bring my wire underneath both these wires. And I'm going to do a 2-wrap weave or 2-wire weave again. And if you have to, lift up on the wire so you can get up underneath it. And I just want to center my wire up so that I have fairly equal length on each side. So I'm going to do 2 wraps. And I'm going to lift up because it's catching up on the back of my wraps there until I can slide it down. And I'll show you here in just a second how low I'm going. I'm going below the half-round wraps. It's a little awkward, but just be patient with yourself. Okay, as before, but this time I'm just going to cross over the middle once. So I'm crossing over, and I'm constantly, if you notice, moving my piece around, trying to get always in my best working position. I'm just going to really snug that in. Don't want that bowing at all. And I'm going to do 2 wraps. And then the same thing over here. So they crossed over underneath. Then I'm going to line them up. Just lining my weaving coils up there so I can really snug them in. I want that good and tight. Okay. Just opening these up a little bit more. We want to always try to make our work look as good on the back as the front, because many pieces will end up being double set. I'm just pulling these down a little bit more. Okay, we're going to cross over one more time. So I'm crossing over. And under. So I'm pulling the wires down. Somehow or another let me see what I got going here. I got a little kink in that wire. There we go. And then I'm going to do 2 coils. And same thing over here. Now I'm thinking about how I want to connect them off. I could bring them back around front, but I think for me, I have enough in the front. So I got a couple options that I'm looking at. And I could bring them down, back up, and curl them in here, which would be really pretty. So what I'm thinking, you guys, is I can either just cut the wire, curl it in, and connect it, or I could bring the wire really down right here and bring it back up, weave it, just connect it in a little spot here and make a little curl. But I think for the sake of length, I'm just going to cut it. So I'm going to swing it down, swing this one down, and then I'm going to curl it. Just saw something down here that bugged me. So I'm going to cut right about here. Less is more, just to get a visual of how much I'm really going to need. So I'm cutting right where the wire is meeting the other wire. So this wire here that I'm going to cut, it's touching right here. So I'm just going to cut right here. And I could curl them up too. And I could also tuck them under. So I'm seeing that too. I'm always seeing different things as I'm looking at the wire. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to curl them. Do you see that gap space right there? Let me get my little tool. So the wire is doing this. It's curling. We're going to curl it up underneath right here where that gap space is. So we're going to work off the tip and curl it in. And we're going to tuck it under that gap space. It's a beautiful thing, this ancient art of wire. I just love it so much. And the same thing over here. We're going to work off that tip, curling it in. And I'm kind of pointing it downwards when I'm doing that. Now this one's giving me a bit of a bugger. I got to lift up on this wire here. I didn't have the same amount of space. One side, for some reason, whoops, and I think we all notice that, is easier than another. I need to get a different grip on my wire so that I can curl it underneath there. And I'm not doing it. So let me get up underneath here. I'm going to try a different plier. I need to point that wire down a little bit so that I can curl it underneath it. There we go. It's just being patient, because every angle that we work on is different. And now I'm just going to bring them. See how this one's crossing right there? I'm going to bring this one to meet it. And then I'm just going to tuck them up even more. And we have this beautiful back. So I'm going to hold very firmly right here, and I'm going to snap. And same thing here. And we're almost done. And we'll finish our bail. So I'd love your feedback, everybody. Tell me how it went for you. So I've got a lot of excess wire here, but I'm not sure I'm going to use it. And both these, I stopped where they were coming around the outside 2 wires. So I think what I'm going to do is just cross them over once. And then I'm going to bring this one back through because I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those yet. So now we're going to make our bail. So you just want to make sure you've got symmetry everywhere. Everything's lined up beautifully. And I'm just going to slowly with my finger start to shape it. And then I'm going to bring it around, holding very firmly. Okay, you want to hold very firmly on the whole piece. The back. Just maintaining my symmetry. Just watching how my bail's lining up. And I'm just pulling it down a little bit. Yeah. You could do any weave on your bail, you guys. I just felt like doing that one. Okay. I'm going to pull it down a little bit more. Holding super firmly as I'm manipulating that wire. I'm going to start bending the legs in, and the easiest way to do that, since we have so many wires, is to literally come in here and bend them up. Give yourself a little bit of a head start. Then I can push them down. I'm keeping my thumb in there a little bit because I don't want to compromise my bail. Because we're going to need to bring this forward a little bit. And we're going to need to connect these wires here. So I'm pushing my fingernail on these bends here to line up with the neck. And then both my wires are crossing over. So I can either do complete wraps all the way around, which I think I might do. Yep, I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to wrap. I'm taking one of the wires from the back and wrap it around. I'm going to leave this one there for a minute. I'm not sure I'm going to use it for something. And I'm holding very firmly as I'm coming around the neck each time, making sure that my wires are lining up. That looks pretty cool. And then I'm going to tie off here. So I lifted those wires up so I could get up underneath them. Pulling good and firm, making sure everything's lining up right here. Snug those coils up. All right, let me see. So I will not be using this wire for anything, but I always leave wire because I never know. I never know what I'm going to do. This is all in my head as I'm going. So now we're going to tie these off. We're going to connect them to the back here. These I could bring back up and over the bail, which would be kind of cool. Let's play with that idea for a minute. I'm going to bring these up. It would be much prettier if it was in the front. And then I'm going to flatten them out. So I need to open them up to do that. And I need to spread them out, holding very firmly as I spread them out a little bit, because they need to ride on the outside of the 2 middle wires that are part of the bail, or they're not going to rest right. See how I'm lining them up in the little bit of the groove there? So I'm thinking about this. That's pretty dang cool. And what I might do is bring it around and tuck it on the inside of the bail. So let's go ahead and take care of these. We have a couple of options here. We can just clip them. And I think before I do that, I'm going to connect this other side with coils so they're good and secure. Uh-oh, I went underneath just the one. I thought I felt a lot of resistance there. All right, I'm still thinking about what I want to do with these, but I definitely know that I don't want them that long. You get to see my creative process. So I can either just cut them and loop them, or I'm going to take off some of this length anyways and even them up. I won't be using all that length either. I can bring them up and tuck them in, or I can just simply cut them. It's really just a couple of options here. So I'm going to go back to the front. So regarding the bail, I'm going to push these down until they bend into the neck. Don't worry about if they cock off, because we're just going to go ahead and correct that. I just want them nice and tight here. Now I'm going to bend them out. You could add a bead at this point, right in here. If you wanted to add a bead, you could add a bead, a copper bead, a gemstone bead. Because I'm going to feed those through the bail. So I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to do there. With these, I think I'm going to, I should have plenty of room to do that. So let's go ahead. We can either connect these with a little bead. Let's do that. And I love amethyst with moonstone. So let me see how this little bead will fit there. If it's too big, if I need a smaller bead. What do you think of that, everybody? Or do I want to do a copper bead? Let's see. Or a different color. I'm looking in my little bead box here. This would be pretty too. I have a little ruby here, and it's smaller. It's a little 2mm ruby. And that kind of disappears in there. It's not enough color. And personally, I think that's too small. Give me a second, I'm gonna look for a bead. So I think I'm gonna use this darling little pink tourmaline. It's about maybe 3mm, 2.5. So I've got all my excess weaving wire here. So I am just going to run the wire through the bead. You guys can probably see the hole, but I can't because the camera blows everything up. There it is. I found it. Just gonna center my wire up. I'm running my wire underneath the two little legs here. Now remember, they're not connected or attached, so you have to hold them down. Or if you pull on them without holding your wire securely, you'll pull this whole wire up. So you have to hold it down. Just want to make sure we're going to center up here. Let's see, that's cute. I'm going to do 3 wraps. Just really tightening that off, because once I connect these bail wires here, I'm going to snap those wires off. Holding down super firm because I don't want anything to move. Okay, we'll line this up in just a minute. As soon as I get this bent, we'll be able to line it up. I'm not liking the way that bead's sitting in there. There we go. And I think it has something to do. Okay, we're going to bend these over. Start centering this up. And I think what the problem is, if I'm looking at this correctly, I'm losing light in here, guys. I'm going to unravel this. It wasn't cinched in there the right way. Just want to make sure. And it's the pitch on the wire. I may not add a bead. I don't like this. I'm really picky. I'll take it out. There we go. I just had to angle that wire down a little bit differently. Okay, we're going to feed these through the bail. And I may end up cutting that bead out. So they're too long. Yeah, I don't know. For me, gang, I don't want the bead in there. So you always get to be part of my creative process. I may go back in later and put a copper bead because I'll still be able to feed through, but I'm not liking it. Something about it's just bugging me, so if it bugs me, it goes. So now we really need to make sure that there's symmetry in these front wires before we tuck them in. And you know what I think I might do is just weave the middle together. So let's do that. I'm going to open these back up. I like that idea a lot better. Just wasn't liking that bead in there. And I know I've got scrap wire all over here. I won't need a whole lot. So I'm just going to lift up on these to give myself some working room. 3 coils. Then I'm going to slide it down and up around the curve, that bend there. Then we'll hold very firmly on the whole thing and really tighten that wire up. Then I'm going to just do a little figure 8, just a little bit. So, and I'm going to pull them together when I do this. That's 3. I am so fiddling with all this right now. But you get to see how I do things. Okay, let's do that one more time. Three coils. We're just doing a figure 8. The wire's coming up in through the middle, so I'm going to cross over to the other side. You just got to hold your wires down because remember, they're not connected. And that should be plenty. Okay, let's just line it all up and slide it down. I like that much better. Just personal preference. That's what wire wrapping is what you like, what you see, what you want to create. I'm going to lift up on these a little bit. Want to slide this down to the bottom. Okay, like that better. So back as we were before, I'm pushing these around. And I'm wondering if I should tuck these in first back here. Okay, I'm going to swing this up, so it's going to help me determine how much wire I need to cut. I'm going to hold down very firmly here, and if I can, because it's such a short piece of wire, snap that off. Yay. Because I'm not going to need this weaving wire anymore. So I'm just holding the legs very firmly. So I'm going to swing this wire up. So I just need enough to curl inside the bail and tuck it away. So right where the wire is resting against the side of the bail, I'm going to hold down with my thumb. And I'm looking at about less than 1/4 of an inch. And the same thing here. So now I'm going to hold real firmly the front, and I'm lifting up on that wire and pushing it towards the inside of the bail. And that's already looking a little long to me, but I can clip it. So lifting up on that wire and pushing it towards the inside of the bail. So I need to cut these down. They're too long. Less is more. We can always go back in and cut some off. We can just never put any back on. Okay. Now I'm going to point the wire down. I'm going to lift up and I'm going to point it down now. So I'm going to lift up and I'm going to point it down towards the inside of the bail. And before I cinch anything off, I'm going to make sure I've got good symmetry. Push my 2 bail wires down, and then I'm going to cinch them off. Just rolling, anchoring off both sides of the wire and just rolling it in. You'll feel it squeeze on you. Okay, look at that. Isn't that cool? Little different bail design there. They're good and snug on there now. I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, do I want to do one more coil? Yeah, I think I want to tie these together a little bit more. So let's go ahead and just do a figure 8. So we're doing wrapping around one full rotation. When we're coming into the second rotation, we're going to go up and underneath. Because I'm thinking I'm just going to make it simple and curl my wires in. But I want them really well connected. Okay, I think that's good. Lift up on this. Make sure they're good and tight. Okay, I think that's really sufficient. I think that will work just fine. I'm going to curl these 2 in the middle. So I'm going to separate the wires on the outside like this so that I have working room to bring them in. And I'm going to cut them down. And I'll tell you, it's about 1/4 of an inch from where the weaving is. It's probably still a little too long because I want a little tiny loop. That looks good to me. And I'm just going to use my needle nose and curl it in. I'm not going to curl it in all the way until I do the other side. So we're looking like this. Then I'm just going to come up where the loop is and curl it into itself. And it's not going to go anywhere. And then I'm squeezing them kind of closed. There's no such thing as kind of closed. Closed. So we have that, and I'll buff that out. That's not a biggie. And then these, I think, first of all, I'm going to get rid of this wire. Do I have enough to bring them up and under? Got some gap space right here. Just really making sure those are good and tight. And then I kind of dinged up the wire. Once I get these out of the way, I'll get in there and buff those out. But isn't this cool, you guys? It's pretty much done, whatever you want to do. It's really up to you, but just thought I'd share this with you. I thought, let's just do a really quick wrap, and it's never really, really quick, but when I first started, this would have taken me 5 hours. I mean, because I didn't know how to manage the wire. But I don't do things super fast anyways. So I'm just debating on whether or not I have enough here to bring in. Or you know what I'm going to do? I think I'm just going to cut them. And they'll be right flush with these wires. So let's do that. And that'll make life real easy. So right here, I'm going to cut right where they're touching the wire. And then I'm simply just going to press them into the stone. And they're actually underneath that wire a little bit, so you can't feel them at all. Well, there we go. What do you think, y'all? I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. I know we're getting a bunch of shadows from the way the sun is right now, but love your feedback. Let me know what you think. I'm going to push this forward just a little bit as I hold very firmly on everything. And we have this beautiful little moonstone pendant. And you ought to see this thing in the right light. The blue color flash in this is just gorgeous. These were beautiful moonstones I got a little while ago. Bought quite a few of them. Anyways, everybody, have a wonderful, magical wire wrap day. Thanks for being an incredible part of this ancient art of wire. I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. Bye for now.